What is up guys, Speed here, and today I'm going to be going over my new tier list. The game has changed, it has definitely progressed. We are far into 7.21D now, and I feel like the meta has begun to shape, and there's a few trends and heroes that I'm starting to notice and feel like are very, very strong. Now, of course, this is all, and a lot of it's up to interpretation. A lot of my opinions are also based off what the pros do, as I respect them greatly, and I think what they do has a lot of merit. So what I'll be going over, first off, is a few heroes that I think are basically always, top tier characters or heroes in Dota, and then 3 from each of the other roles. I clumped together 4 and 5 just because I want to put the supports together, and I don't feel like there's too many standout supports. But before we get into the main content and this tier list, I just want to let you guys know that I made a Pudge mid guide, a complete one of skill builds, talent builds, item builds, drafting, and more importantly, replay analysis for mid and late game for mid Pudge. And I think this hero is super good in the mid lane and off lane right now. So if you were very interested in learning probably one of the most fun heroes in Dota and one of the most notable heroes in Dota, go check that out on the main site. I spent a lot of time on it, and I think it could be great content for anyone looking for a sleeper mid laner and a hero that I even consider putting on the mid tier list. Now, he can be a little bit unreliable in some matchups, so be a little bit careful. Kind of the reason why he's not in this tier list, but go check that out on the gameleap main website. So first off, at the S tier characters of Dota, and this is the best of the best in Dota, at least in my opinion, is Razer, right? Number 1 is Razer. I feel like every time I see this hero, it has at least a good game. The important thing to note about Razer is that he can be an offlaner, he can be a mid laner, or he can be a safe laner. Can be put literally anywhere. But most importantly, and in his best role, is the mid lane. The hero does fantastic with levels, and not only that, but he wins 90% of matchups. I recently played against Tomato Ember Spirit, and I'm not a great safe lane player, but I'm Razer and he's Ember, so I won the lane. Did lose the game, that's not important. I lost the game, yes, but I was 2 levels ahead at some point, and that just goes to show how simple and straightforward Razer is. I think Razer is what Viper was patch or 2 ago. Absolutely bonkers. So definitely, if you're not playing this hero already, play him mid. It is broken. Next off is Brewmaster. Now, this is a hero that I wouldn't say everyone thinks is a top tier S tier character, but it's a hero that I hadn't played for a while, and in my Dota career, I wasn't very comfortable with. But recently, I've started playing him, and I've seen Team, in particular at the Major, have a lot of success with this hero, and I think it has a lot of potential in the laning stage, but also in team fights. It's easily one of the strongest laners in the game. It does fantastic against a few heroes on this list, or even off this list, heroes that I think are very hard to deal with in lane, such as Juggernaut. But most importantly, he disrupts a lot of the save and tanky, like Giga cores that you'll see in these patches. Heroes such as Troll Warlord, Medusa, OD, heroes on this list, even Fenn, don't like playing against Brew because they get lifted up in fights. Also, other popular supports that I didn't put on this list because I just didn't want to add them are Oracle and Abaddon, and both of these heroes hate playing against Brew simply because he just chucks them up in the air and makes sure that they can't save anyone in the fights. And lastly, on the S tier is Morphling. This might be a little bit questionable. I get it, right? This is a very hard character to play. It can die very easily to silences. Spirit Vessel hard counters the character, but the thing is, in my opinion, when a hero has the innate ability to be extremely good at mid and safe lane, like notably good in certain matchups, I think it is a top tier character. As a flex pick in early drafts, I think it is very hard to read and counterpick Morphling without sacrificing your laning stage. Basically, a lot of the heroes that might build Spirit Vessel or have a silence don't necessarily fare well against Morphling throughout the majority of the game. And even if you counterpick, let's say you see a Morphling pick and you instantly counterpick it with something like OD, it might not necessarily be that bad, because then the rest of the Morphling team comp can build around protecting it and also countering its counters. Also, Morphling is one of the highest damage carries in the game. It can steal an entire skill set of a hero, which is bonkers. Some games it feels like Morph is just absolutely game winning. You can turn into Ember Spirit, steal his Slight Chains. You can turn into OD, steal his Imprisonment. You can turn into Lichen, Earthshaker, Fenn, Sand King. Doesn't matter, any hero with a stun, and steal their stun and be a setup hero for yourself. I feel like this hero's potential is out of this world, and not only that, he's near impossible to kill. And the final point I'd like to make about Morphling is that he's good against Razer. Wow, a hero that is genuinely good against Razer. So there you go. But now let's move on to supports. So at the A tier of supports, and number 1 is Lichen. Now, note that I don't mean Line 5. Actually, I think Line 5 is quite bad for the most part, as the hero does typically need items as a result of his squishiness, right? You don't really have great disengage. You do have disables, but not necessarily a mobility spell or anything that gives you HP. And as a result, you want something like a Blink Dagger, Aether Lens, a Glimmer Cape, any of these items that allow you to be mobile in fights. Or you can pick up an Axe, and Lion Axe is absolutely fantastic because you can build up Finger of Death stacks and get a talent. The potential in team fights of this AoE Finger of Death is fantastic. And not only that, the more important part that I think is actually what makes Lion super strong is the fact that his stun is less than 100 mana at level 1. You can spam this over and over and over again, and with a tanky hero in lane, such as Brewmaster, this was a lane I played recently, Brewmaster Lion, you can just ruin safe laners games. Next up is Earthshaker. Earthshaker, in my opinion, is a hero that is not a clear A tier, and in a lot of games actually won't be an A tier, but I think teams are starting to figure out how to play around it again and abuse its strengths, and a lot of the patches that buffed it in the past kind of were overlooked, in my opinion, unfairly so. I think Earthshaker has a lot of potential, and we're actually starting to see more of a shift back to tri-lanes and roaming to some extent, at least in my opinion. That's what I've noticed and observed, and Earthshaker likes doing that. He doesn't like the dual lane meta purely because roaming is his thing, and not only that, he doesn't provide much in terms of trading, but at least, let's say you do need to trade with Earthshaker now. He is a very high armor hero, received 2 armor in the recent patch, and if I'm not mistaken, you received 1 armor before that, but the point is, very high armor, so if you do need to contest lane, you can buy a stout shield and actually just go for denies. And finally is a sleeper, in my opinion. This is a hero that I believe is heavily underrated and actually overlooked in the sense that he is often looked at, being Disruptor, as a terrible laner. Now, this doesn't have to be the case. I think the 2 heroes in particular that you lane very well with are Juggernaut and Tro Warlord. So if you can pick Disruptor with one of these safe laners, you're going to have very high kill potential lanes and then one of the best snowballing supports in the game. There's a few reasons for this. Disruptor's ultimate is only a 90-second cooldown at level 1. The spell is bonkers at just getting solo kills. It's super good, and only a 90-second cooldown. This is absolutely fantastic. There's not a lot of heroes that have a spell that feels like it's an auto kill. It's kind of like Bane Fiend's Grip, where basically every time it's off cooldown, you can get another kill. Well, that's what Static Storm can feel like, and not only that, it's AoE. You can catch multiple heroes. And Glimpse, fantastic spell at snowballing. So overall, I think people are overlooking Disruptor. You just kind of have to pick it with the right hard carry. Next off, let's move into offlaners. First off on my list is Batrider. I actually think this hero can even win his disadvantageous matchups, the matchups such as PL and Slark, simply because they have to play off cooldowns and you can just max Firefly, which gives you movement speed. In addition, a lot of heroes that I think are very strong right now, such as Nyx Assassin, Earthshaker, and Earth Spirit, all love laning with Batrider, and Batrider enables them very heavily because he provides so much kill threat in lane that if you can give these heroes kills, they can buy bracers, their Blink Dagger, whatever it be, to snowball through them throughout the game. In addition, if you pick Batrider early into the game, you actually can put him as a support or a mid laner if needed, but more importantly, you force the enemy safe laner into picking a hero that can deal with him, because if you pick something such as PA or Terrorblade or Lichen, it's just going to be a hard lane. You're most likely going to die a few times, and that's just not what you want to do, so Batrider really puts you in a very bad position, and often this was a hero I used to raise in MMR, so even if you don't think this is a top tier hero, I highly recommend playing it purely in solo queue, because if people do not counterpick it or respect it, you're going to crush your lane as long as you know what you're doing. Next up is Mars. Now, when Mars first came out, I actually thought there was a lot of hard counters to him. I didn't think this hero was particularly fantastic like others did. Now that I've played against it a lot, I take it all back. Get this hero out of Dota, honestly. Just take it out. It's so obnoxious. Like, why can't he just put up this wall that just straight up wins a team fight, and it's super easy to use? You just throw up this arena that no one can get out of. Actually, that's not true. You can actually get out of it pretty easily with some heroes, but a lot of heroes just are absolutely destroyed by Mars. Its laning stage is nuts. Really good base stats, and a Monkey King type attack range, as well as multiple spells that help you win the laning stage. Your W secures CS and harass, your E prevents you from getting traded with, and you have a setup stun. I just don't get where this hero doesn't do well. It can carry, it can support, it can offlane. You build the Vlads and you're like full HP after using 1 W. Overall, if you just want to win MMR and you haven't spammed Mars like all the other garbage players out there with all their inflated MMR, then go try it out. This hero super fantastic, super straightforward. You chuck up some walls, you chuck a spear, then you basically just win. The throne explodes. And finally, for the offlane is Omni Knight. Omni Knight is just one of the best sustained heroes in the game. There's a lot of hypercores that I think are particularly potent right now, as I've talked about. The Medusas, Odie, Alchemist, Troll Warlord, Fenn, Morphling. All these heroes love being sustained. Omni Knight is so good at this. Heavenly Grace is nuts. 28 strength and 50% resistance. You can't control them. You can't kill them. They have an Omni Knight ultimate if needed. Omni Knight Degen Aura, Omni Knight Purification, Heavenly Grace. 4 spells that provide defensive capabilities. And not only that, he can win a ton of safe lane matchups. And the best thing about Omni Knight, and what I kind of talked about in my underrated videos, is that he can carry the game. If you snowball hard enough with maxed out Purification, you can farm quite well, you can build a Radiance, and there you have it. You're off to carrying the game, you're impossible to kill, and you can become the core that you would typically protect. But moving on from the Omni Knight is Death Prophet. Death Prophet is one of the best pushing heroes in the game, and is super hard to calculate. And what I mean by that is when approaching a Death Prophet gank or a fight in which Death Prophet has her ultimate up, I think it is just it's just very confusing on how much damage this hero actually does. You walk up, you're like full HP, you're like, okay, I can stun Death Prophet, here's my time, I'm ready. All of a sudden you're being Spirit Siphoned, you're losing max HP percentage, you're then getting shredded by these bats that are flying around or whatever it is, and they get hit by a Quip Swarm and a Silence that completely destroys every single hero in Dota. That's not true, but I feel like silences are super good, and Death Prophet having a AoE silence makes early game fights super easy. You counter heroes such as Brewmaster, you counter heroes such as Morphling, Odie, all these like really annoying heroes that I think are super strong right now, your silence does great against. So basically what I'm saying is if you need a stable mid laner that can snowball all the towers and catch people off guard, play Death Prophet. I think this hero has incredible amounts of potential, and as a mid laner does everything you would want in a solo queue game, being that it can carry in the mid game, early game, late game, doesn't really matter, it can carry. Next up is sadly, I know, I get it, it sucks, Odie. Yes, this hero is still good. It's still easily one of the best mid laners. You can literally first pick this hero and I think it's going to do well. The thing about Odie is that it doesn't have a lot of losing matchups, and it can change its item build to adapt to any game situation. Basically, if you need physical damage resistance, you can go Greaves, you can go Force Staff, Blink, Shadowblade, not Shadowblade, don't do that. Or if you need control, you can go Midas Hex, or just straight Hex. Basically, this hero is so versatile and will basically have impact in every single game. I actually can't really think off the top of my head of a really hard counter. You could even say heroes like Pugna and all the jump and disable heroes, but BKB can kind of counter them, and then if Odie gets on top of them, it's game over. You're gonna struggle. But if you do want a counter, in my mind, I guess as a side note, I think Drow's very good against OD. Very good silence, you can outfarm him, and you can go mid against him and have success due to Frost Arrows and the ability to take Ancients at level 6. But moving on is Medusa. This hero's still good as well. I don't know if people really hate Medusa as much as OD, but the thing is, I think farming mid laners are kind of like the in right now. It's great to have them simply because the camps are so conveniently located and the mid tower is so important. So basically, protecting the mid laner is also going to protect your mid tier 1 objective, and as a result, you can have a Medusa as your hyper carry. You can pick something like a Fenn, Lichen, Troll, Jug, all these like pseudo carries or heroes that can pseudo carry in the safe lane, and then have this dual core setup that scales super well in the late game, but also fights pretty well in the early game. Medusa is deceivingly strong in the early game. One snake, you lose a giga amount of HP, if that even makes any sense, and her right clicks are pretty strong as you build a lot of stats and power tread. So if you don't play Medusa and you need another farming hero to waste people's time in solo queue, then try her out. And finally, going into safe lanes, we have Troll Warlord. Troll Warlord is just reliable in my opinion, in the sense that he has a very good laning stage and a very good late game. Now, his mid game can be a little bit weird, where basically you often need 1 or 2 items, or 2 or 3 items before you get kited. I mean like mid and big items, and that's the kind of only awkward thing about the hero. But because he has a good laning stage, it's typically not that hard to get there, and he's very versatile in the sense that he does well in dual lanes and in tri lanes. So Troll, super versatile carry. If you don't play him, I think he can kind of be met in solo queue in the only sense where you have to be very disciplined in not showing up to fights until you actually hit your item timings. But when you do hit your item timings, super hard to kill Troll due to his ultimate and his mischance, and as a result of Skull Basher being an item that you can buy on Troll, you can literally bash people into the ground until they are crying. Lichen. Lichen is very nice due to all the minions you can buy that do so much damage with Howl and your passive. Not only that, Lichen is a hero that can deny in the laning stage, and I think denies are a more straightforward way to win laning stage than harassing. In addition, I've noticed that a lot of players actually don't harass nearly enough in the laning stage, and as a result, Lichen thrives in this situation as he has high HP regen if they do actually try to go on you, and you have very high base damage, so if the lane is static, you're going to be able to deny a ton of creeps. Not only that, Lichen hits one of the earliest power spikes in Dota and is a very straightforward carry in the sense that you're going to farm unless your ultimate is up, right? If your ultimate is up, you should be looking for kills and an objective. And finally, last on the list, thank you for staying with me if you were here. I really do appreciate your time. But last on the list is 7. 7 is greater than 8. That made no sense. It was a terrible joke. But the point is 7 is now a good hard carry because I think it lanes very well with a lot of heroes that you would want on your team. And what I mean by that is Fenn has a stun, Fenn is tanky, and Fenn is Warcry. So you can pick heroes such as Shadow Demon, you can pick a greedy support such as Rubik or Dark Willow or Lina, all these heroes that can often feel a little bit greedy, or even something like Winter Wyvern or Witch Doctor and have very high kill potential lanes. Not only that, it makes it very easy for supports, specifically position 4s, to have a very successful game purely because they're going to be able to come to your lane, you can set up with your stun, and almost guarantee a kill. And as a result, I think in team play, Fenn is fantastic. Now, in solo queue, you have to be careful because he actually can lose lane to a lot of the magical damage type of offlaners or heroes such as Doom, potentially. So be a little bit careful, but if you think it's a good Fenn game, he can be a very, very devastating hypercore, as maxing out cleave is a viable strategy. You can go 1-4-1, completely maxing out greater cleave. You can then go for Mask of Madness or Echo Saber and wipe through the jungle camps, and if you can get your supports to stack, you will easily hit the top of the net worth chart and be a menace to deal with in fights. Now, similar to Lichen, basically this Fenn can be very straightforward in the sense that if you have your ultimate up and enough items such as Blink BKB or Mask of Madness Blink, something of the sort, then you know if you have your ultimate up, you're going to go fight. Otherwise, you're jungling. So straightforward heroes in that sense are often easier to play than a hero such as Troll, where even if you have ultimate on Troll, you probably shouldn't be fighting the majority of the time. Whereas Fenn, if you have another core, and the reason why I really like Fenn is because if you have a core such as OD and Medusa in your mid lane, you can just fight instead, right? Because you have a stun, you have Warcry, and you're very good in the team setting in that regard. So definitely, I think Fenn is a underrated hero and a top tier safe laner in my opinion right now. Thank you guys for watching and sticking with me throughout this tier list. I made one a while ago and you guys responded very well, and I wanted to share my thoughts and kind of go over what I thought are some of the best heroes in Dota right now. So if you agree, let me know. If you don't, dislike the video and tell me to kill myself in the comments down below. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. You know, it's kind of whatever you're feeling. But hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.